Hello and welcome to another episode of the All Things Considered CX podcast. I'm Bob Azman, your host, and welcome back for this episode, which I think you'll find interesting. We've been having a few podcasts about technology and the advancement of technology, and I think you'll find my two guests today quite interesting in what they're doing with supporting the customer experience profession through technology. So with that, I'd like Daniel and Doran, if you would, introduce yourselves to our listening audience. And perhaps, Daniel, I'll ask you to go first.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for having us, Bob. So I'm Daniel. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Fullview. I'm based in Copenhagen, Denmark. I have a pretty mixed international background, and I really have been working in SaaS, B2B SaaS for quite a couple of years, and I was really lucky to meet Doran in the entrepreneurial ecosystem here, and we started Fullview together about 1.5 years ago, and have had a really awesome growth journey since then. So it's early days for us, but really exciting times to be building this startup, especially in the CX space these days. So that's really quickly on me.
Excellent. Thanks, Daniel. How about Doran?
Nice to meet you, Bob. Thanks a lot for having us. I'm Dorin, the other co-founder of Fullview, as Daniel mentioned. I'm also based in Copenhagen, and I'm leading our product efforts at Fullview. I started Fullview together with Daniel kind of like out of a need that I experimented in the past. Before, I had a product studio for about 6-7 years, where we built all kinds of web applications for enterprise customers here in Scandinavia. And then in most of the cases, I could find myself questioning about the customers' issues. I was having kind of like a product role, but also touching the customer support, and always thought that there must be a better way of understanding customer support rather than just doing that back and forth via chat. And that's how we started Fullview.
That's great. And what I really like about having Daniel and Doran on the podcast is we love the global nature. Sometimes with having a US-based podcast, we get caught up in what's happening in the US. So I think the fact that you both are based in Europe, in Copenhagen, and can shed some light on the global nature of customer experience, that's great. So Daniel and Doran, before we kind of get into a more broader strategic view of customer experience, why don't you share a little bit about what Fullview is so our listeners have an idea of what your approach was?
Yeah, sure. Happy to shed some light on that. So Fullview, in a nutshell, it's a platform that lets you find and fix technical support issues, working in parallel together with your ticketing system, like, for example, Zendesk or Intercom. So we plug into web applications, and then we let you skip that whole back and forth when you try to understand your customers' issues via a chat, for example, or through a ticket in Zendesk, by letting you watch what happened on your customer screen historically, both like visually in the UI. You can watch essentially what looks like video recordings, as well as console log data and more. So that's quickly, in a nutshell, elevator pitch there of what we do.
I love the elevator pitches. That's good. So tell me, how did you get into this? How did you see customer experience? How did you see the need? It's always curious when we're talking to entrepreneurs about what was the trigger, what happened. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so maybe I can kind of start by telling the founding story of me and Doran, what we were doing and how we came to start this company, and then Doran can definitely talk more about his perspective as well. But so from my side, I was working with customer relationships in a B2B SaaS companies for the past couple of years, and basically owning customer relationships. So I would also be on the receiving end of a lot of support requests, and also kind of how do I do this? How do I do that? Or this thing doesn't work in the product. And people never realize that they're not actually giving you a lot of information when they reach out to a company with with a complaint, or the people just say it doesn't work. Your first question then is, what doesn't work, right? And I think a lot of support people listening to this can probably relate to that. So I saw it from that kind of relationship management perspective, and Doran can touch more about how he saw it from the product angle, because there's obviously a lot of technical issues that you need to be able to debug. So we decided, hey, let's build a much faster way to automate that whole, context finding in support requests. And yeah, Doran, do you want to talk more about like your perspective, how you saw things before starting FullView?
Definitely. So as I mentioned, like having a product role in the past, I was a lot in touch with all the issues that our customers faced, and in a lot of it, like maybe if you work in support, you definitely know that it can get quite messy to understand the problem on the customer side, and then that takes a lot of time. And once you do understand, then as a customer support, if there is indeed an issue, you have to pass that information down to the engineering teams and product teams. And so how do you do that? You typically gather all kinds of screenshots, long paragraphs of text that take about 10, 15, 20 minutes or even more. And then in all that process, maybe you are losing a screenshot of the console, for example, and then you create a ticket into Jira or other ticketing system for developers, and then they get back to you and they say, hey, I understand part of the problem, but we're missing maybe an HTTP request. Do you know what happened there? And then there is this back and forth, not just between customer support and the end user, but also between the customer support and the engineering teams. So I was sitting in that role in the past, and that's how, like, I've been talking with Daniel. There must be a better way to understand this issue. Why can't we have this automated so that customer support can instantly understand the issue on the end user side, but then can also instantly pass on that information to dev teams without the back and forth.
So this is fascinating. What I really like about that, what you just talked about, is as entrepreneurs, you also did the jobs and experienced the pain. Did I understand that right?
Absolutely.
Definitely, yeah.
That's what makes it so intriguing, that because too oftentimes we think technology is going to solve everything because we haven't experienced the actual problem. And in this case, you two have experienced the problem and trying to solve it through technology, which I really think is fantastic.
Exactly, and we basically built the product that we wish we had ourselves, and then actually now that the product is in the market, we use it. We are also a software company ourselves, right? Coincidentally,
Right.
so we use the product ourselves every single day.
So tell me about, you might not be able to reveal the actual name of the customer, but tell me about the profile of your customers, who's using it, what's their applications, and so forth.
Yeah, so we at the moment we focus exclusively on the software market, but of course in the future
Right.
we do see ourselves expanding to all kinds of businesses that have digital portals or even digital experiences with their customers. But we focus on B2B software companies, and that could range from, of course, that's quite broad, but that could range anywhere from there's like insurance platforms out there, or automotive ERP systems, HR platforms, whatever you name it. But software, like there's a quote out there from, I think it's Mark Andreessen, who said that software is eating the world. It's kind of like basically saying that every industry in the world kind of runs on software. So it makes sense that you need a tool to be able to troubleshoot all of that software that all of these businesses out there in the world, they rely on. So that's why we decided to focus on the B2B software market to start with.
So that's even great too that you mentioned the B2B market, because so much of what we hear and talk about is B2C, and much less visibility around B2B. And so that's great to hear that's an area of focus for you, and that you can translate that across industry. So you're not necessarily industry specific in terms of your software application.
That's exactly right. And yeah, I mean, I think people, they when they think of customer experience and customer support, they think about their own consumer experiences, right? Maybe you bought something from Amazon or whatever it might be, and you had a bad customer experience, not necessarily with Amazon, but with any company in the world out there, right? It's happened to all of us at some point. But I think also, like with B2B, there's a much bigger meta trend in terms of B2B software is becoming consumerized in some way, because people are not just buying software in a top-down approach where it's like, for example, a C-level manager buys a solution and then implements it into his or her team. But there's actually more like bottoms-up software solution out there where, for example, Loom is a good example. It's like a video tool that it's also B2B, but anyone can just sign up for it. Or Zoom, we're using Zoom today, right, for this for this recording here, but anyone can sign up for Zoom. But that means that there's a lot of individual users inside of companies that need customer support. Which, what does that mean for vendors and companies? It means that the support volume massively increases, because now you don't need to just support one product owner or one C-level executive who bought the software, but you need to support all the individual users of the software too, who signed up along the way.
Well, and as somebody a lot smarter than me once said, is that we were debating the difference between B2B and B2C. They said, look, we're all customers. That's the bottom line. So whether in a B2B or B2C, we're all customers trying to get a job done.
People. Exactly. There's people behind the scenes trying to solve a problem at the end of the day.
Right. We used to call that. I used to say that that's at the core of any motion. I dealt with a lot of different organizations. They said, well, we're different than everybody else. And I'd say, well, what is at the core of what you're doing? Well, we're solving customer problems. And I'd say, exactly. Everybody's trying to do the same thing. So
exactly. Yeah.
So you mentioned what you're hearing from customers and so forth. It's a great lead in to my next question, which is, what are you hearing from customers? What are their challenges? What are they trying to achieve in customer experience? Because you have this unique ability to do that because you're talking to different clients in different industries. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that a big thing that we see over and over again is that customer support teams are becoming more tied in together with product teams. And I think it's also kind of related to what Doran was saying earlier, but I think it's because they realize that, okay, we have problems, whether it's B2B, B2C, whatever it might be. It could also be like maybe your consumer company dealing with, for example, like, makeup packages, whatever it might be. You want to improve that product based on what your customers are telling you through your support channels, right? Regardless if it's B2B or B2C products. So we definitely see this big trend of support teams, and sometimes they actually even report directly to, for example, the head of product, or like chief product officer is actually like the stakeholder of the support team, because there is so much information and feedback hidden in all of these support conversations that needs to be tied back into the product development. And yeah, with that said, I think that's great, but it's also a little bit idealistic, because actually, if you think about it, the majority of problems that customers experience, they'll never report those. And I think it was Zendesk had a report on this, that they said that it's only like 1 out of 26 problems that are actually reported to a company, and the rest are just, people just ignore them, or eventually they just get frustrated and they cancel their subscription. So we're trying to kind of unearth a lot of these problems that happen in your software or in your different products, but are never reported, so you can find them proactively.
Daniel, it brings up a really good point. And I was in a business to consumer situation where I got this huge promotion from a company that I do a lot of business with, and they wanted me to activate an offer. And when I went to activate the offer, the website was down. And I thought to myself, wow, what a terrible experience that is, that you do a promotion, you make an offer, and the website's down. And then there's no way to communicate that back to them without calling, wasting your own time calling customer service, and then getting customer service and have them say, well, we'll pass it along, right? Well, okay, but you have probably thousands and thousands of customers trying to access the offer, and yet it's broken. And how much time am I going to go back and try to do this, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and your time is valuable as a customer, right? You're extremely busy. You don't want to just like donate all your time to reporting these issues that you found, which maybe at the end of the day they don't affect you that much. So what's the incentive for you as a customer to report issues, right?
Right. This is fascinating what you talked about, the Zendesk report of 1 out of 26 issues are reported. I can remember years ago, the General Electric Answer Center used to have a system in place where you could, if there were so many issues reported about a refrigerator or a stove or something like that, that it would alert the engineering department to say, you've got a problem. We're getting reports of a motor failure in refrigerator XYZ, and it's over the threshold. You got to do something about it. Is that similar to what you're talking about?
That's actually, that's a funny example, yeah, but that's essentially the same thing, same principle that lives today. And whether it's like but in a more digital world today with software products, it's the exact same thing. A lot of customers, they will experience issues, and then they won't actually, the vendor or the producer of that software won't actually know about those issues, because most people probably won't bother to report them. And it's also something we're looking into a lot with our product, like how can we enable people to proactively find those issues before people even report them in the first place. Because like the example you just mentioned assumes that people will report the issue with the fridge or with the website or with the application or whatever it is, right?
Right.
But what do you do if people aren't reporting, if only 1 in 26 are reporting the issue in the first place? Doesn't mean that the issue doesn't happen, right?
Dan, you're not talking about being proactive with problem reporting, are you?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like a buzzword in some way, and like of course it's, there's still a lot of technological development that needs to happen in the market before companies can become proactive. I think a lot of, depending on what type of customer you have or what kind of product you have, but especially for software companies in our market, like it's so hard to gain visibility into like where the problems occur, because a lot of software products have a lot of complexity to them. There's hundreds of different services and different parts that go into building software. So it's almost like finding a needle in a haystack. Don't you think, Dorian, as a product guy, that it's a pain?
Absolutely. And I love Bob's example with the General Electric, because actually, just as I mentioned before, like whenever there is a customer issue, even in the cases where that issue is reported, nowadays tech is becoming more and more complex, and you have so many dependencies, so many third parties, and there's so many stakeholders involved till the point that the actual developer will get to see that issue. So maybe in some cases you have like level 1 support, and then in case there is something more technical that they need to pass on the case to level 2, and level 2 needs to pick up from there, and then add even more information and do more investigation, and eventually you will report that to developers. But basically what we're trying to do, it's also to skip, like we were thinking, how can we skip some of these steps in this process? How can we make this process more efficient? Therefore, proactively creating tickets, reporting these issues directly to the developers with the entire context that they would need.
Well, Doran, you're kind of talking about one and done then, aren't you? I reported an issue and I can get it resolved quickly and efficiently without all these escalation processes. Have I understood that right?
Absolutely. Or you might not even have to talk to an agent, a support agent, because maybe by the time that they talk to the support agent, they already know about the issue. They've been notified. The issue has been passed on to the engineering team, and in case it's an issue that is affecting several customers, there is already a fix in progress. And you would just be notified as an end user that, hey, the issue that you just experienced 2 hours ago has been solved. Thank you for the understanding.
I just can't get over the proactive nature of what you're talking about, because in customer experience, we spend a lot of time reacting, right? Reacting to an inquiry, reacting to a sale, reacting to a problem. And yes, to some extent, you're still reacting to an issue or problem within the software, but you're moving the needle, right, to be much more proactive.
Exactly. And we have like we are using our own medicine and FullView. We use FullView to understand FullView's customer issues. And I can tell you that customers are writing us emails that it's like out of the ordinary experience that we're offering them, top-notch experience, because we reach out to them proactively and we say, hey, we noticed that you had an issue when you clicked the button X. We just want to let you know that there is an issue, there is a fix in progress, and probably in about 2-3 hours, the problem would have been solved.
Yeah, exactly. To add to that, like it goes beyond just trying to like solve and fix a one individual support ticket, because like you said, Bob, like a lot of the time support teams, they end up being just reactive. So you might just spend all your whole day just like seeing a Zendesk ticket and then closing a Zendesk ticket, going on to the next one, right? that's great, but then you're not actually preventing those support tickets from happening in the first place by also, improving your actual product. And that's kind of what our vision with our company as well, and then with our product, to become like a bridge between the support teams and product teams to be able to improve their product over time, so they're not just chasing after repetitive issues that could be prevented.
That's an interesting comment that you made, Daniel, in that we talk about service recovery processes, and one of the cornerstones of service recovery is you have to do it quickly and effectively. And then once you've done that, you don't want to repeat it. So you want to feed that information back into your product, pricing, marketing, engineering teams to say, we're seeing a common problem, so that they can fix it so it doesn't happen again. And what customers often say is, I'll give you one mistake. I'll forgive a company a mistake or an error once, but and in fact, if you do it, you recover well, oftentimes retention goes up. But if you make the same mistake twice, the retention, loyalty, all kinds of key factors in customer experience drop dramatically, because the customer says, wait a minute, this company doesn't know what they're doing. I'm having this problem. It's a repeated problem. They're not fixing it. So your comment about feeding it back engineering is really that continuous improvement process that says, we've identified errors, we're correcting it so the customer doesn't experience it again. And as I said, that's really a cornerstone of customer experience and service recovery. Is it's okay if you make a mistake, but you got to recover quickly, and you can't let it happen again.
Exactly. Imagine, use this metaphor. Imagine that you're eating at a restaurant, and then you have to, for whatever reason, the food is too salty or something's wrong with it. You send it back to the kitchen, right? And the waiter's really nice and apologetic, and they, it's on the house, we take it back. But then imagine that keeps happening over and over again. Then it doesn't really matter how nice the waiter is, right? Or how many times they give you something for free at the restaurant, but you need to go back to the kitchen and say, hey, something's wrong with this dish because customers keep complaining. Let's actually fix that. And that's kind of the same thing we're doing for B2B software with that analogy. We want you to be able to fix repetitive issues, so you don't have to constantly, run after your own tail trying to solve these support requests.
Mm-hmm. So how long have you been at this? How long have you been developing this? By the way, now I understand the reason you called it Full View. Now I put two and two together there. So very good there. But how long have you been at this?
Yeah, not that long actually. So we're still early stage startup, and we started the company in around fall of 2021. So it's been about 1.5 years from now. That was February 23. So 1.5 years. So it's been really, really fast so far, and we were able to attract a lot of capital from investors for this, because it seems like the problem really resonates, and the big market trend is definitely also, it makes sense, right? We're talking about it in this podcast, and the problem is somewhat obvious, but the solution is just not there yet. So we're also able to attract some great capital from people like Lightspeed in the US, and Cherry Ventures in Germany, and the founders of Unity and Pleo and so forth.
And if I could just add on top of that,
Please, Doran.
One of the major waves that we're kind of riding on is that customer support. It's not seen as just as a cost center anymore. Customer support is also seen as a way to expand your business, because you can grow by acquiring new customers, but you can definitely grow by having the existing customers to expand with you. And I think this is a macro trend that we've been riding on. And it seems that the solution that we have fits right into this trend.
Doran, it's so true. And that attitude drives the way you set up those support centers. If you view them as a cost center, you have a dramatically different view of them than if you consider them a profit center. In the US, we've had, I think it was an airline that eliminated their customer service and went completely all self-service. And I mean, I'm assuming they did it for cost-cutting reasons, but it's so short-sighted that they don't see the opportunity to, like you said, to expand the customer relationship, especially in a B2B environment, right? You're trying to expand that customer relationship all the time.
Exactly. It's especially because customer support can and is becoming a major point of making a difference versus the competition, a differentiator point. So you can have some amazing features, a product that it's thinking outside of the box, but then by having extremely good customer support, it's a way to make a difference. Because if you would just say maybe fintech, if you give me an example of a fintech company, if you give me half an hour, I'll probably come back with 10 other competitors. But a way to make a difference, it's also the way in the relationships you create with your customers by the type of customer support that you're doing.
No question about it. And another question for you. So are you global in nature? Is your software being utilized? I know you're just an early startup, but is it being utilized in the US or in other countries?
Yeah, actually, it's speaking of global perspective. So our team is based in Europe, but our customers are all over the world. So we have customers in Australia and US and yeah, pretty much everywhere. UK, Europe. That's kind of our main geographies. But it's kind of it's software, so it's not like we have to be there. It's not like we have to like ship something physical out into the world. So it's pretty easy to onboard customers globally.
Right, definitely. Before we go, and this has been a fascinating conversation, Daniel and Doran, I really appreciate you joining the podcast today, and exciting to hear what you're working on and the developments. But give me a few thoughts about where we're headed in customer experience and what you're hearing from customers. What's the future hold for us from your perspective?
It's an important but also tough question, actually, because of course. But I mean, yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, first thing that comes to mind is also the macro economy that we're in right now. It changes a lot of priorities for a lot of companies. So I definitely think that people are in this, mindset of trying to retain as many customers as possible, because it's harder now to win customers. People have lower budgets than they had before. Budgets are tightening up due to the macroeconomic situation that we're find ourselves in globally in 2023. So I definitely think that there's a big trend of wanting to like make sure that your customers are happy and they stay loyal with you, and then show them that you really care about them, which is also the point that Doran made earlier about using customer support as a profit center and a growth mechanism rather than just a cost center. So I think that will amplify a lot this year.
Doran, any thoughts?
From my point of view, I think everyone's seeing what's happening with the Chat GPT and the AI. I think that will be one of the major components of doing customer support in the future. Maybe not this year, but it's coming.
Sure. Excellent,
yeah, definitely agree on that one too.
Oh, go ahead. Thanks, Daniel and Doran, for those comments. So listeners are interested in getting in touch with you. How about a website or contact information to share with our listeners?
Yeah, for sure. If you want to learn more about FullView and what we do, you can visit our website. It's just fullview.io. That's our website. And feel free to reach out on LinkedIn as well. You can find me and Doran. I'm Daniel Bach. That's Bakh, and Doran Tarau. Perhaps you can put the notes in the show notes if that makes sense. But otherwise, our website fullview.io is very easy to find.
Excellent. Thank you both. Really appreciate your insights, and good luck as you continue to build out FullView.
Thank you so much, Bob. Appreciate it.
And this has been another episode of the All Things Considered CX podcast. I'm your host, Bob Azman. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your networks. And as always, stay tuned for future podcasts of the All Things Considered CX, as well as my colleagues at the CXFM Radio Podcast Network. Until next time, thank you.